Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cenk Doğar. On behalf of Arçelik and Garage Innovation Hub, I would like to extend a warm welcome from Istanbul to all of you in different parts of the world. It is my pleasure to be accompanying you through today's event, Open Innovation Day. Actually, we prefer to call this event Open Innovation Day as we are welcoming not just only Arçelik employees or suppliers or partners, but anyone who is interested in and has the desire to contribute to innovation. Today at this event, together with the Arçelik and Garage Innovation Hub family, innovative thinkers, corporates, and startups from all around the globe, we will start a conversation that we are hoping to inspire a collective innovation journey. While the world is facing unprecedented global changes, innovation has become more important than ever. Now everything happens so rapid and change continuously comes so fast that only following to stay up to date may not even be enough. So, what is coming up today? We will be starting with inspirational video contents which are created with the contributions of our participants. Throughout the first half, we'll have 2 panel discussions on thought-provoking topics as well as question and answer sessions. After a short break, we will continue with another panel discussion, this time on sustainability, followed by an engaging keynote speech and an extraordinary creative session with Mike Walsh. Our gathering is going to be a collective, inspiring, and interactive experience rather than a traditional one-dimensional event. Before we get started, I'd like to give some information about today's interactive tools so that you can get the most out of our gathering. First off, I'd like to remind you that our live stream allows you to choose between English and Turkish language options, which please see the bottom right of your live broadcast window to pick up your preferred language. Secondly, I'm very happy to say that today's gathering will generate a surprising exchange of ideas between our participants and our guest artist. Until 2 p.m. Turkish time, which is about 55 minutes from now, a live survey will be online and open for your contributions. The results we get from the survey is going to be a part of a creative, breathtaking, inspiring process. Our guest artist will create a brand new artwork using your contributions dedicated to Open Innovation Day. But that's not all. On Garage Innovation Hub's LinkedIn account, there will be some new activity today, and the participants who follow Garage Innovation Hub LinkedIn page will get a chance to own a unique NFT dedicated to our gathering. But how could you be a part of this interactive experience? Just click on the survey icon at the top right corner of the screen. Be a part of our artwork and follow Garage Innovation Hub's LinkedIn page. Until 2 p.m. Turkish time, our artists will be waiting for your live answers. What else? In order to stay connected throughout the day, you'll be able to ask your questions during the live stream. Type your questions like you always did, or you can even record a video asking your questions. All you have to do is to click on the icons at the top right corner of your screen. Last but not least, your photos can be a part of our engaging event as well. We invite you all to send us your photographs while watching our event. We'd love to see each and every one of you and be a part of our today's gathering from different parts of the world. Just snap and email your photos to this address, innovation@arçelik.com. After our live stream, we will create a snap photo movie as a memory of today. So, if we are all ready to kick off Open Innovation Day by Garage Innovation Hub program, I am pleased to introduce Arçelik Innovation Director Pınar Köse-Kulaç to deliver her opening speech.
believe often good ideas emerge at unexpected moments and rather unusual places. Those good ideas, when shaped into great ones and executed together with a diverse community, may end up changing the world to the better. We're going through times of unprecedented change, which we have never thought possible in our lifetime. Climate change, now pronounced as the climate crisis, COVID-19 outbreak and its repercussions in social and economic form. During these times, innovation is ever more important. Given the possibilities enabled by technology with immediate access to a plethora of information, we need to remain hopeful and optimistic. The challenges introduced by the change and the crisis require collaboration across geographies, cultures, technologies, and disciplines. Also across academy, startups, other enterprises, customers of enterprises, and any other valuable part of the community. Innovation does not belong to a function. It is a process we shall all seek to be a valuable part of. Ergo, we now call ourselves the Garage Innovation Hub, where we dare, connect, venture with value. Not alone, but with our community. We embrace open innovation. Open innovation runs on trust. Trust requires knowledge-sharing attitude, collaborative culture, ambidextrous thinking, and diversity management. With trust as the new currency, I believe the world's most wicked problems will be addressed one by one through collective, collaborative innovation. At Garage Innovation Hub, our ways so far crossed paths with more than 1,800 startups in various forms, be it in an acceleration program, as a mentor, as a cross-pollinator in an ideation session, or directly as a venture client. We dare to boost that number to 5,000, connecting that 5,000 to our internal and external resources, to venture together for larger value, for all the stakeholders and for the world. As twice an entrepreneur, now as a corporate innovation leader, this commitment is very dear to my heart. Rumi said, and I quote, "The source of now is here at Open Innovation Day." As Garage Innovation Hub, we set our life on fire and we seek those who fan our flames. Let's have an engaging conversation.
Dear Pinar, thank you very much for this inspiring speech. As most of you know, Arçelik is already on an innovation journey of taking bolder steps in order to dare, connect, venture with value, as Pinar mentioned. Dare to be wise, dare to understand, dare to address the right problems with the right technology. Start, try, fail, and restart. Connect to inspire, connect to get inspired, learn together, to tap into collective intelligence, boost impact, venture to build, venture to grow, and spin off the new with value to individuals' growth in their professions, abreast with up-to-date matters. Starting an engaging conversation to Open Innovation Day program will be flowing on the basis of these 4 principles: dare, connect, venture, and value. Before we start with the first session, I would like to invite you all to watch our short film. It's about transformation and creating a new mindset with innovation. This film is created with the contributions of participants and collaborators of Innovation Champions program.
Innovation creates value for the people, by the people. But how can we get there? With a guided vision, values-driven culture, embracing the mission.
Innovation is about people. It is about making progress. It is about making change possible with the right mindset. And that mindset requires championing openness. It requires Outside-in thinking, it requires collective intelligence. And with the shift of our corporate activities into open innovation, we create networks. We create shared learning opportunities through our internal and external ecosystems. In the innovation program, 52 of our managers held more than 140 hours of mentoring sessions with startups. They were from 13 different markets, 32 different functions. It was a true manifestation of diversity. And that led us to demo days where we see co-innovation, collaboration opportunities with more than 40 different startups. I think that's amazing. And that experience itself perfectly confirmed our perspective regarding innovation. Innovation, it's not the job of any particular team or function. We need to holistically build our innovation muscles for everyone in Arçelik. We can make a difference by empowering each other to innovate, by respecting diverse views and perspectives, by encouraging diverse views and perspectives, and mostly by creating the state of mind of innovation champions.
As Garage Innovation Hub, we have a goal to train and develop 100 plus mentors, which we call innovation champions. The main purpose of these innovation champions will be to help corporations internalize the open innovation mindset. Embracing open innovation basically requires fostering 3 key traits in a corporate setup. The first one is courage, basically meaning taking risks. And the second one is collaboration and camaraderie, representing working with various stakeholders towards a common purpose. And the final one is commitment, basically not giving up until we reach our goals. These 3 cultural elements are the foundation of the Innovation Champions Mentorship Program.
Catching your thinking pattern is the next mindset. Cliché but always valid, change is the only constant. Time is the only unrecoverable capital, and the paradox is to unlearn to learn the next. What's environment to your body is context to your mind. Waterfall is long forgotten, agile is the next, but just for the sake of the next.
Hi. At T&W, we understand like no other that in order to successfully innovate, it is essential to work together. By bringing together corporates, startups, investors, and other stakeholders across the tech ecosystem, we bring forward new ideas that contribute to more innovative and sustainable businesses.
A strong feeling of trust and fellowship among innovation champions is the secret sauce. With trust and fellowship, ideas can easily be challenged. Different points of view can be heard, understood, and taken into consideration. When you feel psychologically safe and unafraid of speaking up, ideas bloom.
As Winston Churchill told earlier, success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. Search for greater good. We need to be committed to take one step at a time consistently. The people who dare to challenge the status quo, the ones that will lead the way through innovation.
When you have a dream or a goal at work or in your personal life, motivation is what gets you started, but commitment is what kept you going. This is clearly about taking action, making sacrifices, learning from failures, but never give up your dream.
To reach above your dreams, believe in yourself and fight the obstacles. The key point is learning from your failures. Even if you fail, never stop. Keep trying until you succeed.
You only define the product or the solution that you dream about it, and you work on it until it becomes a masterpiece for you. What we have created with the Clico, strong bond, understanding of customer needs, business model, sales channels, your rights as a startup, protection of your knowledge.
As the Clico team, when we created our product, it was very important for us to understand the needs of the customers and what really happened in the field. Together with our experienced mentor, we had to seek, test, and repeat the right business model. Our mentors' help was priceless for us to to start investing from scratch.
As a mentor, I believe continuous learning is essential. There are always new skills to learn, new strategies to adapt. At this program, with Marketer Stack, we create a bond, establish a good communication that helped us learn more from each other.
As Marketer Stack, we have an AI-based B2B PaaS solution for enterprise customers. We know that each mentor and mentee relationship is unique. Plus, we believe that we have a great relationship with our mentor Tarık, especially while we are focused on sector-specific collaboration scenarios. Dear Garage Innovation Hub, many thanks for this project experience. From now on, we are on our way with your guidance.
It's just the beginning. Journey leads its destiny with you.
Innovation is creating value for people with the people via holistic approach. Next up, we are going live for our first session. But before we join the session, it's time to make a few reminders. Please take a minute to join our live survey. We are waiting for your contributions. Have you snapped your photos yet? Not yet? Don't worry, we still have plenty of time to go. Please email us, and our snap photo movie won't be complete without you. Now it's time to talk about how to connect with community. Corporate Innovation in a Changing World panel is starting with moderation of Arçelik Chief Strategy and Digital Officer Utku Barış Pazar. And please welcome our participants, Bengi Korkmaz from McKinsey Turkey, Enis Hulli from 500 Startups Istanbul, and Hussein Kanji from Hoxton Ventures.
Hello everyone, what a nice start. I'm amazed and energized by the video and everyone's thoughts about innovation. Well, innovation is a buzzword, innovation is a dream, innovation is a challenge. It's something that we all want. We all want to be innovative, we all want to create something new. It's like looking for the gold in the old times, but it's very hard to achieve at the same time. It's almost full of cries and lots of failures, and there are one out of maybe 10 succeed in that journey. Just to give you some numbers, innovation is even more important for the existing companies because we always talk about innovation as something new, some new products, some new business models, and so on. But we also need to remember that there are a lot of incumbent companies and firms that are also in this journey, but most of them are not successful. If you look at some really hard numbers, like the S&P 500 and how many, this is a very frequently used number, but since 2000, since year 2000, 52% of the Fortune 500 companies cease to exist. And looks like by 2027, 75% will no longer be there. So given that, innovation is even more important for the existing companies, just like the entrepreneurs. But innovation for the existing companies, it's even harder maybe. We all know Harvard professor Mike Tushman's ambidextrous organization word, which means organization needs to both keep on doing what they do well, but they also keep on innovating, which they call explore. So to do it's all about exploring and how to do it right. And we believe that the answer is open innovation. But even open innovation is difficult. Embracing the collaboration with startups, external ideas is very challenging. But today I have three very experienced experts who are really vested in this area, and hopefully with them we will try to shed some light on what are some of the best practices and how can companies get better at open innovation. So welcome Bengi, welcome Enis, and welcome Hussein. I look forward to your thoughts and ideas, and I'll start with Bengi. Bengi is a partner at McKinsey, and most of you might know McKinsey as a consulting company, but over the last couple of years, McKinsey has been invested heavily in digital new business models. They've been collaborating with more than 500 such startups and acquired even close to maybe 20 of them. So, Bengi, what is changing in the world, and why is open innovation even more important today?
Thank you so much, Utko. First, it's great to be here, and it's amazing that you're organizing this event. So, as you said, the S&P statistic is really something to reflect on, right? So, and I want to bring some facts from a survey that we have done with roughly 1,000 executives around new business building. And what they're saying is that by 2026, half of the company revenues will come from products or services that does not exist today. So most companies realize that the products and services they have today, they don't meet the needs of the consumers. So all the incumbents, who control a lot of resources today, I think they realize that they need to reinvent themselves in a much faster scale going forward. And this is where I think the importance of innovation comes. And this innovation, of course, could come from M&A. It can come from corporate ventures, could come from new business building. So it will come from many places. That's why the word in openness is important. It can come from anywhere. And this is hard for companies to realize, because companies always think that they know the best, including our company. Like every company in the world, we claim that we know everything, which we clearly don't. So I think to adjust in the new world, obviously this the new business building and new ideas is super important. And also, like, the importance of sustainability. 9 out of 10 companies say that they will be working on creating sustainable products and services. So I do think there is a lot of momentum at the moment in the world. Many executives realize that this is a priority. At the same time, we also know that there's a lag between companies realizing that a trend has arrived and get into action. So this is why I think companies like you are investing in open innovation, and all of us, we're trying to kind of minimize that gap so that we continue to learn, and we invest, and we we scan the external environment to be able to serve our purpose.
Thank you, Maggie. It's very clear. I really like this, and I noted down 50% of the revenues will come from products and services that don't exist today, which is tying tightly into the S&P numbers. So future is unknown, and open innovation is important, but we also know that it's not working as much as it should. And you mentioned about not invented here syndrome. But there are also different dynamics at play. So Hussein, I mean, welcome again. And I just, before asking the question, I would like to introduce Huxton to our audience here. Huxton is an amazing venture capital firm based out of UK. You guys have 4 unicorns under your belt already, and you have invested in more than dozens of those similar companies. And from your website, I'm going to quote it, 44 billion value created. That's amazing. I mean, when you think of the value, 44 billion, that's a huge number. So you must be working a lot with these startups and their relationship with the existing companies. So from your perspective, Hussein, what works and what doesn't in this open innovation journey?
Yeah, I mean, so we're pretty happy that we've been pretty good early stage investors, and I think the one thing you didn't say is, we write the check at the very beginning. So when these companies are tiny companies and they're fledgling businesses, and then we watch them grow up, and we're only just getting started, and delighted to have you guys as investors as part of our journey as well. So we've seen a lot. I think what we have generally seen in the market is the market is stacked very much against the innovators. It is difficult to build a big new company and innovate, and it usually tends to happen in greenfield opportunities where the company itself is doing something brand new and there isn't an incumbent market. I think if you're trying to build a product or service that has to go head to head against someone else who's already in the market, it's very challenging to be able to get market share. Small companies, the kinds of which we invest into, are not very well equipped. They don't have a balance sheet. They don't have supplier power. They don't have relationships in the industry. The deck is very much stacked against them. And if they have to go against someone who already has any of those things, they generally tend to lose. So we focus mostly on greenfield opportunities where the entire product or service that they're building is brand new, and that allows the company to kind of grow into the market kind of almost unencumbered, because if the product or service is brand new, there's no one else usually playing in the field. Corporates generally don't tend to think this way. It's very hard to go to your boss inside of an organization and say, I want to bet the future on this brand new thing, and the market size today is zero. But I'm going to bet my career and I'm going to bet the company's future on this. It's kind of one of the reasons why we have the innovator's dilemma that Clayton Christensen has written about. But it is something that a startup and a venture-backed company can do quite well. And if they scale, it's usually the corporate that kind of wakes up a little bit later in the game to figure out, can they actually, should they be in the market? And by then it's sometimes too late, because if the company has accelerated rapidly, it might turn into its own independent company. And that's one of the reasons why you kind of see M&As. So, that's at a high level. I think if you're doing something innovative, you have to stick your neck out there a little bit and really focus on these new markets, new product categories versus just incremental innovation. I think incremental innovation versus like fundamental innovation are two very different things, and we only play in the new innovation space.
So when it comes to making sure that the corporations are able to work with the startups, there are, as you mentioned, there are some intrinsic differences in how they make decisions or what type of tool sets they have. So in your experience, what are some good examples on how to make this relationship work?
Yeah, and so I think if you're a corporate, a lot of what you're doing is planning. And so one of the things that I always say is, startups are very inefficient organizations. They're only focused on the one thing that will grow them up, and they tend to run their companies pretty poorly. In fact, it's very hard as a young company to try and do 10 things right. You can only really do one thing right, 9 things are broken. Inside of a bigger company, that's inexcusable, right? You should be able to do all 10 things right. And so you end up with a lot of forecasting and planning inside the organization. Now, unfortunately for a startup, these two things don't always work very well together. And if a corporate is trying to engage with the startup community, they tend to usually plan. Budgetary cycles are a really good example of this. Most people do their budget, in the year prior to the next year. A startup doesn't have the ability to wait around for the following year for the company to actually create a budget and create a collaboration project with the company, because startups are usually funded only for about 12 months, maybe at a max 18 months. So by the time the budget comes around and the engagement actually starts, the company runs out of cash and goes out of business and doesn't have anything to show for it. So time is super important in figuring out kind of startup time, which is 12 to 18 months of life, with a company which tends to plan out usually 3-year, 5-year, 10-year roadmaps. These two things sometimes are orthogonal. And one of the reasons why brand new markets and big new markets actually really make a difference is because if the big new market actually takes off, then the corporate actually feels very much behind the wheel and almost has to break its own rules and break its own planning to kind of become a participant. And those kinds of collaborations work amazingly well, right? When there's such an urgency on the corporate side that they're willing to break the rules, not do the full set of planning, and actually engage with the startup. But finding that liaison between these two things is quite challenging sometimes.
Hussein, thank you very much. Really good insight. I'm just taking some notes about actually you're almost talking about two different worlds. and you mentioned about the differences of this world in terms of, money, time, some critical domain factors. So I'd like to move on and ask a similar question to Enes. Enes, again, welcome. Enes is representing 500 startups, a global venture capital firm, and Enes is in their Istanbul office. Enes, I just looked at the latest numbers. You guys have 22.7 billion dollars under assets, made 2,600 investments so far globally, which is a huge number. And I'm pretty sure you have had the opportunity to observe the relationships of these startups with companies like Arçelik and many others. So, what are your key takeaways, some of the hurdles, and your recommendations on how to overcome them?
First of all, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. As 500 Global, we also have a lot of corporates who have invested into our funds, including yourselves, actually. And even from Turkey, we had 15 corporates who have invested into our fund, looking to boost their startup engagement. And this happens on different levels. And as we start with startup engagement to understand where the corporate is on a spectrum, I think the two things are a must. There are two strict rules where there has to be a dedicated team and there has to be someone who's directly reporting either to the CEO or to the board. So the startup engagement things under a corporate umbrella shouldn't be under a business development initiative or a CTO. It should be directly tied to the CEO. But even when those two things are right, the culture element is what people often get wrong because even when the leadership team is committed and leadership team sets a different dedicated team, a dedicated budget to boost the startup engagement efforts, corporates like to take things slow. As similar to what Hussein said, corporates are a bit more risk averse. They're not as move fast, break things, and then fix along the way. And this creates a big dilemma as you're trying to engage with a startup. So I think the details are more ingrained into the cultural differences between a startup and a corporate. While a startup wants to move fast, be agile, do short-term planning. If it's wrong, you can iterate again. A corporate likes to take things slow, do long-term planning, which is also what Hussein said. And then this interaction between a startup and a corporate can be diminishing. It can provide negative value and negative returns for both sides if you cannot equate the cultural elements between the two entities, which often becomes the biggest hurdle, which is where we try to step in, where we try to push for the mindset of more rapid iteration, failing fast on the corporate side so that they can boost open innovation initiatives between the two sides.
It is. Thank you very much. I think these cultural differences are very, very important, and even the awareness about these cultural differences makes us go a long way because we always assume that the companies that we interact with are in our own frame of reference in terms of money, in terms of time, in terms of processes and decision making. But you rightfully say, just also Hussein, they're on a different time zone, time domain, let's say, and we need to understand. And I really like this liaison idea where coordinating all these efforts and making sure that we internalize this culturally is a good way forward. So now I'll continue with Bengi. Bengi, you've worked in McKinsey not only in Turkey but also in Europe, United States, I believe also in Korea. So you've seen the entire McKinsey and global innovation ecosystems as well. So what are your, some key learnings from McKinsey's journey in this digital business building and other startup collaborations?
Thanks, Utku. I would say like the whole collaboration and like open, let's say, alliances and partnerships is really important to us because we're living in a world like where our clients want the best, and in today's world, like the knowledge and the expertise also lies in like very specific people and geographies. So we see ourselves as a catalyst to also like understand some of these capabilities around the world and then bringing them to our clients. So this is an important role that we are aspiring to play, or we're trying to play. um, as you have mentioned, we have more than like 500 ecosystem members. These are people, institutions like Microsoft, SAP, and companies that we work like really closely with. And then we have also acquired like more than 20 companies over the last 5-6 years. um, I think the learning is that, so we work on a project basis, and sometimes business buildings can take more than like 5 years, 4 or 5 years. And as part of that, we bring the startups into these engagements, and that creates a very, I would say, low risk way of seeing how the chemistry works. We typically, like, once we identify a potential partner, we scope a project, and then, of course, that process needs to be kind of run by the risk and all of that. But then afterwards, we see how it works in one geography or in a one client's situation, and then we try to kind of think about like how we can scale it up. And we have a central team, a leading team based in London, but they also have liaisons in different parts of the world. And I think starting small and really like testing and then creating a success case and then scaling up has definitely worked for us. And and in terms of acquisitions and some of the interesting stuff, I would say like one example is Disney Institute. This is a partnership we have with them. We they are really good in customer experience. For instance, lots of clients want to see like how they manage customer experience, so we have brought them in like a few engagements and kind of helped, especially in the public sector, how we create better customer experiences. Another example is Vivid Economics. This is a company that we have acquired. They operate in the world of sustainability. They do sustainability economics and modeling. And then another example is Averkin, which is in a completely different space, which is like coaching and leadership development. And, initially we started to kind of bring them to our engagements, but then we realized how important this leadership development space is. So we actually acquired them and integrated them to our system. And now like we have, we've been kind of running our programs with them. So it comes in a lot of flavors, but I do think that it is about taking the first step and then bringing, getting people excited about it, and then like with the ambition of scaling the collaboration up.
Thank you, Bengi. Really appreciate. These are very vivid examples, and as actually we've been discussing with you on some of these projects, and I like how you framed it in terms of taking the small steps first and then going big. I think that's the way, because sometimes that big step is hard to achieve, and you just need to show. I call them the breadcrumbs. It's like you need to lead through that journey, so that gives small pieces of success. But now I'd like to explore a little bit
I
on
think
this.
the most important thing is courage, what you said. And to bring courage, you need to bring excitement. So, and the excitement typically comes with a story, with a, with a case example, with an exciting client story. So that when that excitement surpasses the, the fear and the, and the motivation to not to do anything, then I think you can get people moving.
I'm a firm believer of that. We've seen, I think, as Architect, the very vivid example about our collaboration with Beyonce during the pandemic times. We had never actually collaborated with a startup at that scale in a crunch time frame, where actually we kind of like squeeze the time frame of any such projects by a magnitude of 10 times or so. We were able to turn this around relatively in like a month or so, which is, which would normally take about a month, about a year or so. So I really like this awareness, courage, and also inhibitors of the non-invented here syndrome. Let me put it that way. So all of them coming together and create a motivation to change is, I think, is very vital. Thank you for the example being given. I'd like to continue with Hussein on this time. Hussein, you've been mentioning this, and I wanted to pick up on that. So what are some examples of these time differences, and how can we manage that?
Yeah, so the big difference is I said, a startup's life is unfortunately always very perilous, and they don't get a refresher on life until they get their new round of financing, and these financing rounds tend to be every year and a half. So, a startup is trying to do as much as it possibly can to stack the odds so it can go get another round of financing, which means getting contracts, getting engagements, getting partnerships, showing real traction and momentum before it runs out of money, only to go off and do the entire thing again every 12 to 18 months. And it's only when a company gets much bigger that it actually gets stability and can start thinking much more about the future. Corporates don't have any of these issues, and most people are usually planning cycles are much longer. where I think things actually usually align really well is when there is a brand new market and a big new thing, and a corporate is missing exposure into that market, they will go off and break a whole bunch of rules, right? If you need a particular piece of technology in order to get something into the market and you never forecasted it, you didn't even realize that it was important technology, and the startup has the technology, the managers and the executives of that division will actually go break the rules instead of doing the planning, because it becomes almost a crisis. There's an urgency, and urgency usually means you don't actually follow all the rules. So that's usually the easiest way to collaborate. And we always say in our industry, you have to be in the business of selling painkillers, not selling vitamins. Because when you're in pain, you're in crisis, you will go off and break the rules, right? If you're selling a vitamin, it's a nice to have, and you go right into the normal planning cycle. The other way of fixing these things is sometimes, and this helps, and it's very hard to do because it requires a lot of dedication on the company side, is if someone who's an executive is willingly sponsoring engagements with companies. So it's not the line manager or the manager's job. It's not their neck on the line, because the worry in most companies is if something goes wrong and I'm working with this startup and I go ahead and I break all these rules and it's not an emergency, then the natural thing is I get fired or I get demoted or I don't get my promotion. And you really need to get past a lot of that inertia. And the only way that can happen is if you have executive sponsorship. You tend to find this a lot in the corporates who actually do investing. So corporates who set up venture funds or venture programs to actually go invest into companies and leave them alone as independent companies or independent organizations do fine. Companies that do that but don't leave them alone but have the executive team kind of figure this stuff out. The worst I've ever heard is actually not a corporate. It was the country of Malaysia had a sovereign wealth fund that was investing into startups. And the startups would queue up every finalized, company that they're ready to. Sorry, the fund would queue up the finalized list of investments up to the prime minister. So the prime minister obviously is not going to spend every week looking at every single one of these companies. These are scheduled every 6 months in advance. And then there was a regime change in Malaysia. The prime minister left, and there was a new prime minister, and a company that was counting on the Malaysian sovereign wealth fund to write the check the check never materialized because the country had bigger issues as they were going through a leadership change. That's a very pronounced version. It's not a corporate version, it's a state version. But you can imagine that level of planning. The only way to get past that is if someone who's very senior says, you know what, send it all to my desk. I will go figure this stuff out. And the corporate venture funds that are either 100% independent or 100% tied to the CEO or someone very senior in the organization are the only two corporate venture funds that kind of actually usually succeed. Anything else where there's hierarchy and you have to go up and down the chain of hierarchy or the chain of command, usually by the time the decision gets done, the startup, it's too late. Right? So you have to shortcut this time element. It's either crisis or it's someone very senior saying, you know what, no one has to stick their neck out. This is super important for the company, so I will take personal responsibility to actually do these engagements. Let's go make it happen and go bring me the stuff directly to me. I think that's the best way to kind of get past this time dimension. The startup, unfortunately, can't do very much. I wish the startup could change things to make themselves more attractive to the corporates, but they only have 12 months of life. There's only so much that they can do on their side. They got bigger issues. The responsibility is usually more on the corporate side. And all the startup does is if it realizes something's going to be too slow, it diverts its resources away from that and goes on to something else because it's got to go figure out how to survive.
That's absolutely fantastic. So basically, if I want to summarize what you said rapid decision making. So the corporation needs to learn to create a framework for rapid decision making when they're collaborating with startups and eliminate some of the progresses. But I've written this down: painkillers versus vitamins. That's very interesting. I'll need to think about it. But I'll ask my last question to Enes. Enes, the cultural differences we talk. And we know that there's an intrinsic dilemma about how both of these worlds can cooperate. So what are your key learnings and recommendations for us? What have you seen work? What didn't work?
First of all, I think how you start actually determines your destiny. So there has to be a firm commitment from the corporate. Otherwise, when things are going well, the corporate doesn't want to put allocations because resources there because things are going well in the main business. Anyways, when things are going bad, the corporate obviously doesn't want to put resources there because things are going bad. There are more fires that they have to stop. So firm commitment. There's a reason why venture capital funds are 7 years, 10 years, 15 years. It's because we shouldn't be affected by momentarily changes, positive or negative. It has to be much more stable. And there can be strong engagement on different levels. I mean, if you think about this more like a Swiss Army knife and going through the pyramid analogy, investing into a VC fund is the tip of the pyramid, is the minimum that a corporate can do. But then as the AUM increases, as you do more and more investments, you start building a dedicated team, which might start doing primary investments. As you go down the pyramid, you do late stage investments, early stage investments, and you go wide, you even do entrepreneurship. And there are great examples, especially in the Bay Area by these corporate startup engagement programs of Mitsubishi, Siemens, Yamaha. They all, I think, their culture of innovation changed because of their basis in the Bay Area. And this might be a local example, but yesterday I was at a panel with Yahya Ülker from Yıldız Ventures at Harvard Business Review's panel, and he was talking about how they spun out İstegelsin, which is a grocery delivery company, out of the holding to become its own entity in and of itself. And by that, even that spun out and how fast they do it, their agility, their short-term feedback loops kind of fed in to all of these different holding companies so that they also change the way that they do the business. And I guess a global example, which was again an investor in a 500 fund, BBVA, acquired the 500 startups portfolio company, Simple, back in the day, which was a fintech banking provider. Although it wasn't the best exit out there, I think just from a cultural perspective, it pushed BBVA to launch into new markets with a mobile-only beachhead strategy, which worked out pretty well around Europe for BBVA. So I think there are a lot of good examples out there, and what's important is to have a firm commitment and not start from the top and go down the pyramid as we do more and more with a dedicated team.
Thank you. I think this dedication, both mentally and on a resource-wise, is very critical, as you mentioned. Bengi also touched upon investing, being LP. Hussein also mentioned similar things. So I think if I am to frame that, it's commitment on both culturally and also on the resources, both in terms of money and a team commitment. So thank you very much. We are now towards the end of this, but I'll try to summarize what I've heard from you in terms of how to make innovation work in an open innovation setup, because I don't think that there's any question about whether it is the right thing or not, because it's for me undebatable anymore. It's where the answer is. We know it from so many different examples. But courage is required to make the mental change. We need to build an ecosystem outside of the company that can help us. This Bengi mentioned 500 ecosystem partners. That's huge. How to nurture that ecosystem, how to build that requires dedication, as we just said. Dedication both in terms of resources, but also in terms of the senior management ownership. We need to show success. We need to show success early and with small steps. We need to understand the difference of the two worlds. Because the startups and the corporates are living in two different worlds. And we need to also enable rapid decision making. And these are my key takeaways from the session. But I also want to mention one thing. This is something that we've been trying to really get our head around over the last 1 year. We had a session during the pandemic in Clubhouse, and one of the startups that we had collaborated actually gave us a feedback saying how difficult it was to work with us. And simply because of the decisions you made. Like to get a POC commitment was so long. Whether we would pay for the POC or not would be a discussion that took them months. And they were like, we really wanted to collaborate, but by the time we were able to get there, it was too late for us. So we really took it to our heart, and we've been working on it, not just by Arçelik, but since we believe in this ecosystem, we've been working with companies like us, and soon we'll be launching a new platform called Here to Next. The whole purpose of that platform will be making corporations open innovation friendly, so that they will be oiling their engines to work better and faster with the startups. So I encourage everyone to follow up on that. We'll be releasing some news together with our partners. There will be some coach group companies. There will be some big companies in the Turkish innovation ecosystem. But Enes, Bengi, Hussein, you are more than welcome to divert some of your portfolio companies as well to these ecosystems. So our job is to really create this ecosystem, not for Arçelik, because we believe that even if McKinsey has built their own ecosystem, but we are trying to build an ecosystem that is even bigger than Arçelik. So let's see how that works, and I hope that we'll be able to put some value into this ecosystem starting from Turkey as well. Again, thank you very much for your thoughts and participation. Pınar, the floor is yours. Thank you.
I'd like to thank to our participants and to you all for joining our panel. Before we move on, I would like to underline something, that questions. Our broadcast today, as you know, is viewed by thousands. And having such important and valued guest speakers, it surely results in receiving serious amount of questions. I'm sure they will continue to come as we still have plenty of time to go. So the good news is that our innovation team will take care of the questions so that none of the questions will stay unanswered. A quick reminder, please note that it is the last minute to join our live survey. Please join and be a part of our conversation. Our guest artist can't wait for your contributions to finalize his artwork. Now it's about time to focus on startups and how to become a startup-friendly company. Ladies and gentlemen, we are moving on to our venture session. We have another video also for this session to look closer at the topic and dig a little deeper.
What is a startup? They change the world one startup at a time. And what is a startup-friendly company? It means a company that collaborates to innovate. Let us tell you what, why, and how.
When I hear the phrase startup-friendly company, I think of a company's ability to speak the same language and work smoothly with startups and generate value. It's a fact that one of the most powerful open innovation practice is company-startup collaboration. In today's business world, startup collaboration is a necessity rather than a choice for corporate companies to remain competitive. We know our developmental point in this game. We take steady steps every day in order to be more startup-friendly company.
There is no startup-friendly company. There are startup-friendly company employees or managers. Institutions cannot be startup-friendly by nature. If startup-friendly managers are working within the institutions, it's of great benefit for both sides.
Startups are not the smaller versions of big companies. However, they are the agile and the faster version of them. They are both solving someone's problem, otherwise they could not exist in the market. So collaborations between them create exponential value on solving specific problems. To sustain that collaborative environment, there must be a mutual language and mutual understanding between counterparts. This could be generated by a platform or champions in the institute.
At Arçelik, to become a startup-friendly company, what have we done so far on the way? We simplify the startup purchases process. We supply simpler and shorter contracts. We do not offer free POC. We shorten the payment term and pay in advance in case of need. We develop a TV app for the promotion of startups. What is next? If you're ready to hear more, let's continue with the live stream.
Stream. It was a joy to watch this visual story about harmonious collective effort. Coming up next, another live panel in which we will explore further and exchange ideas on the startups topic. Innovation Director of Arçelik, Pınar Kösekulaç, will join us once again, but this time she will also be moderating the session. And our valued participants are Dr. Ayşe Özkavukçu from Migros Up, Funda Çetin from Tüpraş, Tuğba Gökcan from Anadolu Efes, and Tomasz Krotkiewski from Engage.
Welcome to our panel. We're going to talk about working with startups, walking with startups. And I have with me esteemed guests, our panel members who've been pronounced Dr. Ayşegül Özkavukçu from Migros, Funda Çetin from Tüpraş, Tuba from Anadolu Efes, and Tomasz Krotkiewski from 3Engage, the only startup founder among us. Welcome again on my behalf. So we're going to have a very engaging conversation, and we have really short time. So let's show how we can do it the startup way. No, I'm just kidding. So let's have it a go. You have heard our story. As Arçelik, this is really dear to our hearts. We have been working with startups, but we would like to do better. I mean, we know that there are ways that we can all improve. But there are numbers out there. So there is a platform called Innovation Leaders, and they have done a survey among more than 300 large corporates, and 48% of them said they did not know how to work with startups. They knew something like startups existed. They knew that those startups had good ideas, but they really didn't know how to work with them. That's quite striking, 48%. That's a serious number. And if you look at the last numbers, just from last year, 2021, Startups Watch declared that the investments went almost twofold, so increased 93%, up to $643 billion globally. That is also a striking number. And you know how many unicorns we had last year? 390 of them. And we always talk about Fortune 500, right? There are 390 unicorns just last year. So we really need to acknowledge that those startups do exist, and they do exist in the same ecosystem with us, and we need to collaborate. So I think we have no other way. But hey, let me ask the very first question to each one of you. Ayşegül, what does startup friendly mean to you? Shortly, in one sentence.
Okay, thanks for asking. I think a startup-friendly company should support, should listen that startup, and should understand the changing needs. Needs are changing. I think that's the challenge. We should always aware of changing environments. One sentence.
Okay, thank you so much. Funda, what's your take on this?
Great, but I will speak like two, three sentences. Well, first of all, because I need to mention that at a startup-friendly company, you know, from the interns to C-levels, everyone should understand and acknowledge the importance of engagement in startups. So you need the internal buy-in, right? And overall, startup-friendly company approaches to startup with empathy. They should be open, be an efficient supporter and enabler, along with giving startups the freedom. And it's very important for companies to reflect lessons learned, to continuously improve starting engagement processes, and they should train their employees accordingly.
Tuba, what's your take on this?
Yeah, thank you, Pınar. So actually, with only 2 words, I can say that being startup friendly means being super empathic, especially while working with them. So thinking like a startup and behaving like a startup in the collaboration process. And beyond that, actually, as Anadolu Efes, being startup friendly means for us actually supporting them, collaborating with them, developing with them, through a long journey, because the real friendship is always with you through a long journey of your life, and sometimes to support you, and sometimes actually to challenge you for a better version of you. And this is what we do with startups.
Thank you so much. And Thomas, as the only startup founder among us, the corporates, so what is your take on this? How do you define a startup friendly company from the lenses of a startup founder?
Well, I think, you know, a lot of potential customers that I meet, small and big companies alike, often don't really listen. They're not ready to be interested I think that's what's missing. So I hear that, oh no, we don't need what you're offering, but I haven't even had the chance to explain it to them. So being interested, open, and ready to listen, and have a little bit more patience, because you won't know, exactly what I'm offering because you haven't done it before.
Okay, that's pretty interesting, actually. Uh, Tuba, I'm going to turn back to you because you said something really interesting when you were defining startup friendly. You said that you're actually going on a journey with them and you need to keep supporting them. So, in your opinion, what are the best ways to collaborate and what kind of supports corporates can provide to startups?
Yeah, actually, by the way, Thomas says was so interesting for us, and it is also relevant for us because startup collaboration is not a short journey. So it starts with the listening them very well, and then it really actually requires a sustainable relationship. So as an office, we don't categorize startups as early stage or scale ups, and we just don't define actually we work with these kind of startups, and with these ones they're out of scope of us. So we collaborate with the startups that the ones actually that working our innovation focus areas, and then that we can develop them, we can support them, and then also they can add value to us. So the support mechanisms could be very different according to the level of the startup. So it could be the mentorship, the network reach, the communication support, sometimes seed funds, sometimes having POC with them, or maybe they're so early stage and we can do the R&D support. Sometimes we just buy their products, but sometimes we just actually build the product together. So for example, Pabinno was one of the very earliest examples that we collaborated with them, and then we created the product together, we developed it together, and then right now actually it's a global startup that is selling to the global beer brands also, and they are right now actually one of our 7 startups that's shown as the CB Insights that disrupting the bar technologies. So it's a big proud of us. And for example, Blind Look is one of other startup that we are collaborating. And actually, when we started to work with them, they were just newly formed. Actually, they were just at the beginning of their life, and we just make a communication campaign for them to be aware of people actually what Blind Look means and what they are doing and what will be the impact actually if they succeed to their business, and then that make a greater awareness actually for other corporations, and they started to work with them. So it was a small support maybe for us, but it had a greater impact for that because they were so at early stage. And the last example that I want to explain is about the e-coding. E-coding is doing the seed ball shooting through eco drones for the climate crisis. And actually we met with them 4 years ago, but last year we had a great campaign with them with our one of our products. So we bought their products, and by this way actually we had a 3 million seed balls actually together for the climate crisis. So as a summary, so there's no one solution or one mechanism to support or collaborate with the startups. It should be evaluated according to the levels of the startup and the needs. So the listening very well and understanding them in a very empathic way is so crucial in that manner.
Thank you, Tuba. Thank you so much. We'll get back to your notes. Thomas, my next question is for you. This is going to be slightly provocative. So, is there a culture clash between new generation startups, corporates, white collar, and in betweens? Is that an urban legend? Like, people talk about this, So, and if it exists, how to overcome it?
Great question. I'm not really sure if it's a question of culture, because to me, being able to navigate cultural differences is more of a social skill. Like we have customers in different countries, each with their different styles of being and managing. So that's not really the issue. I think the big issue is that as an innovative startup, we're doing something new, something that you as a corporate haven't bought before, let's say, or used before. And so even if the head of innovation loves our company and our idea, that doesn't really help, because then we get into the purchasing department. The purchasing department says, oh, 90 days payment terms, or you don't fit our criteria because you have no track record. And then we get an agreement from the legal department, which is very one-sided or almost suicidal for us to sign. Then the project starts, and we start with working with the department, and the department has never worked with this topic before, so there are delays. So I think it's more a question of structure, processes, and systems rather than culture. So I think what one might consider, and I heard from the previous speakers, the idea of having some sort of a fast track onboarding route for startups, that would be a good solution. And just to spread this freedom to be flexible and give your people the tools and freedom to be flexible when it comes to working with startups. I think that's the key issue, more than culture. Culture can be, you just have to be open.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. I indeed agree. Culture is extremely abstract, but when you talk about processes, so you can really nail down the problems. So let's move on to Funda. Funda, we're all from different walks of life and corporate world. So you come from Tüpraş. It's a company where people might consider would be pretty difficult to run an innovation team or innovation functions. So and it's a very complex and large plant, and you're very focused. It's a refinery after all. So, given this reality, how do you find the startups that you want to collaborate with? And how do you ensure the collaboration in that environment, in that setting?
Well, yes, we have very large plants, as we are the seventh largest refining company in Europe. We have metal intensive and limited zone free areas. Yet I'm happy to say that we carried out 17 POCs last year on various areas such as image processing to digital twins, wastewater treatment technologies to energy harvesting solutions. Pinar, we're very actively scouting the technologies worldwide through multiple channels, and over 80% of startups that we collab are located abroad. We have an open innovation group from different departments to coordinate POCs and pilots. And we don't expect startups to address our needs right away, because almost always it cannot be the case. If the solution improves our current operations, we can wait up to a year. If it's a future growth area like green hydrogen, we can wait much more longer than that. And during that time, we're helping them to scale up. Our technical experts allocate time for them to improve their solution. We partner with them, we co-develop the solution. And even if it is a small POC, we set the scope, the success criteria, so that parties accept what is next if the criteria are met. And I need to mention that openness is a must. A startup-friendly company doesn't make startups wait, right? So it is okay to say we're not interested. We always ensure that we give open and honest feedback to startups. And lastly, I need to say that our interest areas are really capital intensive and hard to scale areas. So we need to contribute startups' growth by all means and accelerate their market time. And for that, we invested in Emerald Technology Ventures nearly 2 years ago. And we recently announced that we will directly invest $15 million to international startups until 2030. And apart from that, of course, we will be looking at Turkish startups to invest as well.
Thank you, Funda. I'm gonna go to Ayşegül all the way back. Ayşegül, you recently had a launch, and that was really interesting. I participated partly, and it was a great experience, I can tell. So you launched a new product, Wamo, and with a startup, and you were probably one of the most experienced among us to kickstart co-innovation projects and lead them successfully. So what is your take on this? So, what were the perks and perils, so to say, in the co-innovation journey that you can share with us?
Mhm. Thanks, Pinar again. I think corporates should, at the very beginning, set the strategic goal of while they are working with startups. Our strategy was the co-innovation. So this is a really huge ecosystem. So we should focus on why, because working with startup while we are working with them, we should be fast as fast as we can. So this co-innovation is a really unknown journey, a very rough road. But I can proudly say that both success and failure are welcome. Because we all know that we will learn at last. So, while we are conducting co-innovation, I think a collaborative environment is so crucial, and there are some main characteristics of them. We all know we should create an open communication. We should be transparent. We should create some teams. We should be team with the startups, and we should share the same goal. And sure, we should set a very systematic way. In Migros Hub, we set these, and we thought that we found the new way of innovation together with startups. And first of all, we build an agile team where both startups and the Migros experts are in the same team, and they share the same goal. And we have just 3 months to run that goal. And another key is that I want to share with you, we are not acting as a customer supplier type relationship. We are acting as a teammates with the startups. So that brings a trust based relationship. And also, uh, uh, sharing that vision in just for 3 months creates some dedication and increases the focus while decreasing the uncertainty, while co-innovation consists of high levels of uncertainty. I think the biggest disadvantage is that I think co-innovation projects have a bit higher level of uncertainty when we compare them with the traditional innovation projects, because we also engage with the startups while we are working with our colleagues. And yes, you said that the WOMO, I think it's a unique experience for us. In our first year at Migros Hub, we conducted 6 co-innovation projects like that. And with Hergela Mobility team, we created an agile team, and this agile team consists of the designers, planners, producer, and decision maker, and even user. Think about the new product team like that. So we just reached our MVP in just 1.5 months, and now till at the end of May, I think about 50 Vamos will be working in our distribution centers. Is a new kind of vehicle where we employ the electrical motors like electrical scooters in our distribution centers, and we aim to use that vehicle in our distribution centers while we are collecting the orders of our stores. But that's not the end of the story. We all want to commercialize this Vamo vehicle with Hergele team globally. And so I'm very super excited because these are all new for our system.
Thank you, Ayşegül. I wish you all
You're
the
welcome.
best. So I'm
Yeah,
sure that we can
thank you.
talk for days about this, but we are given a short time. So I'm going to wrap up. I really appreciate your participation and your honest and candid answers. So I'll just share with you my key takeaways from each one of you. So first of all, what is common is that we need to keep being open. So that is one thing. Keep being open, listen, stick to the journey because this is a journey. And please take care of your processes when you're working with startups. So go back to startup time and don't waste anybody's time. So that is the last thing. And co-innovation is a rock road, but it is possible, and it is possible if you conjoin your forces in a single agile team. So let's not forget about this. We walk with startups, we work with startups. Thank you very much. Back to you, Cenk. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There will be a video question. All right, so we have a video question. Wonderful.
I have a question for you. What are the differences between corporates and startups in terms of innovation processes? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of these two cultures in such a rapidly changing world, and how they can overcome the disadvantages? Thank you for your answer in advance. Thank you.
Hello there. I was very happy to get a video question. So there is engagement. So that means the topic is interesting. So I will actually ask two of my friends here to give an answer to this question. I'll actually ask first Thomas, because he can give us the startup point of view. And I'll hear just two short sentences from Ayşegül and Tuba. Thomas, can you please give us the startup point of view? How do startups innovate? And what do you think is the main difference?
I think that a startup there's an equal sign between innovation and a startup. We had an idea, we developed it, but we need to continuously reinvent ourselves all the time. Like there is no end to innovation. So I think it's kind of like the main function. Once we stop doing that, that's when we're not supposed to be called a startup anymore, right? So I think that's the main difference.
Brilliant answer. Ayşegül and Tuba, very shortly, what's your take on this question? Tuba.
Let me jump in. Sorry.
Please,
please after you.
Okay, let me jump in again. I think we are all innovators. There is no huge difference in my opinion. All our resources are melting by time. But I think we as have advantage of testing our new products or services in our systems. But startups, I think, need this kind of environment where we all serve for startups in our Microsoft system.
Okay. And Tuba,
I think the vice
just shortly,
versa.
what is your take?
Yeah, Pınar, I think the vice versa. I think there is difference, and the biggest difference is the time to market. And as corporates, we need to imitate from startups, so we need to learn from them.
Okay, thank you so much. Quick question, startup equals innovation. Corporates, we need to learn from them. The biggest difference is time to market, so we do innovate different ways. Thank you very much. Once again, I'm going to hand the word over back to Cenk, and thank you very much for your active participation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pınar. What a remarkable session. Ladies and gentlemen, with this remarkable session, we concluded the first half of our Open Innovation Day program by Garage Innovation Hub. The second half will be just as interesting as the first one. So don't go far. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Welcome back to Open Innovation Day by Garage Innovation Hub. Following the first half, here we are for the second, which will be just as remarkable. We will start with a critical and vital topic, sustainability and sustainable business. The world is going through a phase with major changes, and innovation is at the heart of sustainable tomorrows. Moreover, change sometimes brings the opportunity to transform our ways of doing and being. Every day, more and more brands recognize what is good for people, the planet, and they will also serve for good in terms of benefits and value. It is promising to see the number of carbon neutral companies increasing day by day, but sustainability and the concept of sustainable business unlike generally assumed, is not only about environmental concerns, but also has a lot to do with education, gender equality, economic growth, and much more. To go further on this topic, I am excited to invite you to be a part of our next panel, which will be moderated by someone who is also personally very interested and concerned about sustainability. Hakan Bulgurlu, CEO of Arçelik, and his guests are Mark Zaleski from BCG Digital Ventures, Niklas Kaskeala from Compensate, and Sala Ahonen from Nestle Corporation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hakan Bulgurlu. I'm CEO of Arçelik. Many of you, of course, know exactly who I am. I'm very, very pleased to be moderating the panel today. We have some very interesting guests who are at the forefront of what we're trying to do in terms of sustainability. Their experience globally in different industries is something that's very relevant for us. And today's topic, we are talking about open innovation. I think it is very fitting because the two go hand in hand. We do have a little Finnish-heavy panel today. It's a small country that punches more than its weight, and that is because they, of course, have been focusing on innovation for so long. And that's why you have so many Finnish global businesses. And that's also why they're at the forefront of this transformation in terms of sustainability. Now, you know, because I speak often, and I wrote a lot about it in my book that was just recently published, if we are going to make a dent and really change our future for the better, for our children's sake, we need to really change how we produce, how we sell, how we consume products and services. And as Arçelik, a product manufacturer, our impact is sizable. We have scale, and our transformation actually moves the needle. I'm not going to talk too much about that, but you're all aware of our targets, very aggressive targets of cutting our emissions, all emissions, scope 3 included, by 2030, and becoming net zero by 2050. Now, that is easier in some sectors, harder in others. Oil and gas obviously being a virtually impossible one. So I'm really looking forward to hear about that. We need technology, which we'll hear from Mark. There's something for everyone on this panel. But one common denominator here is that if we are to get to these ambitious targets that we're all setting, it is only going to happen with innovation and new technologies, because at the moment, the technology needed to get to where we want to be doesn't exist. And the only way forward is open innovation. Now, I just want to give a simple example. You know, we cannot simply say one nation is going to be ahead of the other, like Finland, because of years of investment in this area, may be ahead, but actually Finland being ahead won't make a difference. We need to act as one global force, both in business and governments and consumers, to be able to get to goals which will actually make a difference to our quality of life and literally the sustainability of the human race. That's how far I go. Most people don't like hearing that, but it's an existential threat what we're facing, and we all need to do what we need to do. Now, I just want to give a simple example to open innovation, because it's very recent. This morning I received an email that Vestel, our key competitor, is coming out with essentially their own version of a fiber catcher. And my comment, my colleague's reaction was, look, they've copied us once again. And I said, no, they haven't actually, because what we did is we came up with a technology, we patented it, and this technology essentially filters all the plastic fibers that come off a washing machine and saves about 90% or more of it from going into the oceans. But when we came up with this technology, we announced to the whole industry that we're open sourcing our technology and we will let them use our IP. And our intention is for every manufacturer to use this so that we can make a dent and actually clean up the mess we're creating in terms of the oceans. And for me, seeing our main competitor in Turkey, at least, come out with a model is a sense of pride, not something to be derided. But this is a great example of open innovation because that filter came from a basic idea, collaborating with many different sectors, our suppliers, a very quick study with consumers and retailers, and today it's one of the products I'm most proud of. Now, I've already passed my time, and that's terrible for a moderator to do. So we're with Mark, Niklas, and Salah. They are leading figures. You are leading figures in your industries, especially with a sustainability focus. Can we start with corporate collaboration and open innovation? Like, what kind of a role, briefly, do you think that open innovation will play when it comes to sustainability? Maybe we can start, Salah, we can start with you, then Mark, then Niklas.
Sure, thank you. I'm actually an engineer, so I make everything into a formula. So for me, I often say that for Neste, sustainability equals innovation plus partnerships. So I actually really think that we don't move forward with our sustainability agenda without innovation. And I also make the point that for me, an innovation is only an innovation if it's also sustainable. So this is really something that is a driving force behind everything that we do. It surprises people quite often to hear that for a company like Neste, we have about 25% of the staff working on R&D and innovation. So this is really the foundation of the business as well. And then we also really look out for who to collaborate with. This is why my formula has the innovation and then plus partnerships. So who are the right people, the right organizations to collaborate with? And that depends really quite a lot on where you are in your journey. Because sometimes it's about working together with research institutes, with universities. Sometimes it's about finding the right startup who may have something that you don't have. And sometimes it's about finding, like you said, a competitor who can help you scale up your good solution.
Great, thank you. Yes, I'm particularly interested in how a company in your industry can actually really take sustainability as I mean, you kind of have to, but put it in the center of everything you do, as you said. And then actually, how do you gain traction? Because your targets are very aggressive, becoming carbon neutral. We'll talk about that later. Mark?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Hakan. Yeah, there are two facets to open innovation, and the one actually that Pinar mentioned earlier in the early in the, I was going to say the program, but you know what I mean, in this on today. I think the most common is the outside-in aspect, where external ideas and technologies are brought into the corporate's own innovation process. You always look for ideas and technologies that fit with your business model, but you could say logically those that don't fit can go to the outside. But what I really love is, for instance, what you're doing and what you mentioned earlier, that washing machine example, is also then giving it out to others, so that others can also benefit for the benefit of all of us. Because I think progress at scale will require corporates to drive climate innovation from the inside out and share their IP. 2050 net zero, it will be the largest investment in human history. We can't fail because we know that half the world's population could be exposed to, at least one climate hazard like drought or flooding and so on. So we know it is existential, as you said. But the technology, to get there, has been developed, but there's still a lot to do, right? And I think that corporates aren't going to be able to do everything by themselves. Yes, each corporate must focus on their assets, right? Their unique superpowers, if you like, that they've cultivated over the years, like customers and capital and processes, operations, and so on. And those will be the key, I think, to accelerate the unicorns of tomorrow, right? To the level of scale that we truly need to move the needle on climate change in the short amount of time that we've got. And I think in the next couple of years, we can expect to see the smartest corporates productize their assets at scale, launching platform plays, because they are, critical to the ecosystem that allows startups, if you like, to build off them and pivot off them, to help change the world.
Great. I fully agree with you. I mean, if we're going to change the world, this is how it's going to be done. Niklas?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, fully agree with the existential threat that we have. I mean, climate crisis is the biggest challenge humanity has ever faced, and we won't solve it if we stick to our silos and don't work together. I'm going to give you an example from the market where I work with. So Compensate is an impact startup that works in the what's called the voluntary carbon market. So where corporations or organizations, even individuals, can pay for carbon capture or avoided emissions in order to offset their emissions, unavoidable emissions. This can be done through technology or by using nature-based solutions in many ways. And we already have too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We surpassed safe levels of CO2 concentration in the late 80s. And since then, every single day, every one of us adds more CO2 into the atmosphere. So we need a system, we need a functioning market to remove excess CO2 from the atmosphere. But this is a very, very young market. It's a very immature market, and it's full of growing pains still. And Compensate, we developed a pretty innovative solution to tackle many of the challenges that the market has. But we decided right from the get-go that we won't just focus on our own innovations, but we'll publicize whatever we find and also make it available for others. So we work together with leading climate scientists, leading forest scientists, for example, to create criteria to evaluate carbon projects around the world. We've seen that most of them fail when we evaluate them. But what we've done is we've publicized, we've made it available for everyone, this criteria that we use, so everyone else can use it as well. We work a lot with advocacy towards reforming the market, getting more regulation, better regulation. We're working with NGOs, with investigative journalists, so forth. So I guess what I'm trying to say is basically that we're trying to achieve an impact that goes much further than our own service or our own, approach or our own products, trying to influence an entire market. And I think that's the sharing part of it that needs to be there. If you have something that's innovative, just don't keep it to yourselves. And it's similar to the washing machine example that you shared earlier. So very similar thinking there.
I will come back to some very specific questions with you because we're on the cusp of some very difficult decisions, and I think you will have very direct insight into that, and it concerns innovation as well. Let me get to some of my more challenging questions. These are not scripted, okay? So I'm going off script. You probably, Salah, know what to expect from me, but I'll be gentle. I mean, essentially, you come from an industry which is responsible for a large portion, not all of it, of course, of where we are today. I find it very brave that you're also trying to be at the leading edge of the transformation that will actually clean up your business and maybe even get to net positive if that's possible one way or the other. I'm specifically curious about, I say Arçelik is a dirty industry because we are using virgin materials and our products continue consuming electricity in their lifetime, right? So our scope 3 emissions are gigantic. I'll give you an example. If we cut it by 50%, that's 11.5 million tons. That's roughly the equivalent of Hungary's annual emissions as a country. So I know that companies with scale really are going to have to lead here. And I'm very curious to hear genuinely what action you're taking to reach those very ambitious targets you have. 2035, carbon neutral in production. In the oil and gas business, it's harder than ours. And then, of course, carbon net zero, which is even more ambitious target. So how much money have you set aside for this? And what is the role of innovation? And do you personally believe that you will get there?
I'll start with the last one. Yes, I couldn't do my job if I wouldn't believe in what I do. People quite often ask me, what is your budget? And that's the wrong question to ask, because it's not about us having a sustainability project that is supposed to solve the problem. It's about changing the company. It's about changing the way we operate. It's about changing our investment criteria. So really, when we started working on this carbon neutral production, and yes, we started with the production with our own activity. So looking at how can we bring that to zero and how can we do it in a realistic manner. So we actually had a few workshops where we had people from all over the organization, production lines, business units, everywhere. And I said, hey, how can we get there? These are the biggest sources of emissions in our activities. So what can we do? And then I had a really wonderful moment when somebody from the production line asked me, are we allowed to dream? And I said, yes, this is where you dream. And then we see how we can make the dreams reality. And then there are some of these ideas are quite simple. How can we do things in a more energy efficient way? And how can we then move towards using only renewable electricity? What can we do about, and then some of them are more still needing more research, carbon capture and utilization, and what can we do about green hydrogen? So we started to see, why haven't we implemented these yet? So it was about us not having the right investment criteria. So now I've changed the investment criteria. So we went to our investment committee and we said that, look, every investment from here on, it needs to show our greenhouse gas impact. And now they do. But also we introduced an internal price on carbon so that we can show that it makes sense to do this, because we actually really believe that polluting will cost more in the future. And that's not all. What Niklas was also saying, you want to go beyond. It's also something, what is the role you take in the society? So we blew everybody's mind when we started saying that we think that carbon should cost more. Polluting should cost more. So we're actually also asking policymakers to make those choices so that it encourages others to, do the same that we're doing. It's also about finding how can we scale up green electricity. Everybody says that, we will go electric and then all the pollution will go away. But it's also making the right choices in building the infrastructure so that it's actually available for all the industrial processes, etc. We've actually started, making power purchase agreements so that there will be new green electricity available for us, but also others need to look into, realistically, is this going to happen? We now have 100 different initiatives, and I really mean it, that we have put on a roadmap. We have about 80 different people in charge of them. So it's not, Salla and the sustainability team will do something, but it's about those who run that part of the business. They are in charge of these specific initiatives. We report to our executive committee bi-monthly. We report to our board. This is one of our strategic priorities. This is included in our leadership bonuses. So basically, if they intend to get their bonuses, it's not just about selling more, it's also about meeting our climate targets. So this is what I mean. It's not about having a budget. It's about changing how you operate the company.
Yeah, you pretty much tick off every box there is when you need to make sustainability a priority in the way you run your business. I do believe that this is has to be a leadership owned way of thinking. And what we have done is we have a separate balance sheet for carbon and a separate balance sheet for profit and money. And actually, we weigh the balance of both everything we do. In your case, though, of course, it's very, very difficult. So I'd like to understand maybe in the next couple of questions, like, are you buying carbon credits or are you creating carbon credits to offset what you are doing? Or are you really trying to clean up your industrial processes? Because I think that's also a very important point.
We're trying to do everything that is possible, but we know that not everything can be taken away, which is why we're talking to credible offset providers, Niklas included, actually, because we want to make sure that then, because like Niklas was also saying, it's a developing market. There are also offset providers that I don't find credible. So we've actually also made it our business to make sure that when we do buy offsets, we know that it's actually going to work. It's actually going to be a long-term solution. And we've actually given ourselves the target that it would also target biodiversity. So we really want to look at a larger sustainability action.
Great. I will put Niklas in the hot seat around that later on. But maybe with you, I believe in a process like yours, open innovation is going to play a key role in actually changing the way you produce things and changing the way how you consume fossil fuels in your processes. Because that's where technology will be needed. And maybe this will bring me to Mark. I mean, basically, I'm putting my finger on something which is the same for everyone. In our industry, it's easier, right? It's relatively simple. You just make your buildings much more energy efficient. You know, you basically create circular loops for your waste materials, water. You produce your own energy. This year, we're I think it's about 50 megawatts. I mean, we're on our rooftops. You know, we're becoming a power company ourselves, and we're not outsourcing that either. So this is committing capital to producing our own power, so that we reduce our emissions. Because don't get me wrong, I'm a supporter of offsets, also credible ones. But I think the point of industrial manufacturers has to be reducing what they actually cause. And there's many ways of doing that. And I think innovation and technology will have a key part there. So you've been in and out of many technology companies. I mean, you see more businesses inside out. Do you see revolutionary technologies coming in this area of decarbonization, or do you see smaller startups, tech companies investing in this open innovation approach, trying to attack the problem from this angle? Because everybody's looking at offsets now, and you know how they can. That's an easy solution. How much focus is on the difficult solution?
Yeah, I mean, I think, excuse me, I think offsets are a little bit of, I mean, it's hedging. I mean, you're still somewhere, you know, the problem's still there. It's a band-aid solution. So we have to solve the root causes, if you like. And I think, and it was mentioned earlier as well, I think both Salah and Nicholas mentioned it, about partnerships, you know, between startups, corporates, and academia. I think it is really, you know, is the way to maximize the impact of climate tech. Because, you know, I know that there is a lot of innovation coming from academia and startups, but then working together with the corporates that have the scale and the resources to get them the impact faster, I think is critical. So I think that's the largest role that corporates can play, rather than just, you know, taking carbon credits, that they're actually trying to take innovative solutions to, you know, to solve the root causes. So I think really it's, you know, we know that corporations occasionally are extremely creative. Sometimes they're not. Obviously, I'm excited with what you were talking about earlier, Hakan. But I think working together to accelerate innovation is the right way to go. And we've said, you know, at BCGDV, we've been around nearly 8 years. We've said that corporates in particular will be and need to be the key drivers of innovation. And that's crucial for climate innovation too. So it might be that you don't actually have all the answers. You have all the tools and all the resources and the assets, if you like, to really take what's out there from academia, from startups who perhaps are looking at, you know, to solve something very particular. But then you are then the super additive to then drive that innovation forward to really solve the root causes. So I think, you know, I think that's, in terms of innovation, I think that's crucial. And then I think, as I mentioned earlier before, that I think, you know, really focusing on your own or looking for external solutions to help drive, you know, decarbonization of your own products and operations, you know, and corporates reducing emissions along their own value chains, as well as investing and inventing solutions. That's the way to close the innovation gap.
Well, thank you, Mark. I mean, you point out exactly the whole purpose of today, because you see, I believe that we need to solve our own problems, right? Nobody's going to come in and solve them. And actually delaying them by buying credit is not a solution. It just delays the problem. So we need to attack every process in order to decarbonize it. Not only decarbonize it, it's also, you know, eliminating waste, increasing recycled content. I mean, there's so many different facets to this. But ultimately, we can only do this with a completely different approach to innovation. We need to be completely open to academics. We generally are open to academics. I think we're good at that. But what we're terrible at is actually collaborating with startups that are creating new technologies, or maybe buying startups, helping them along. You know, this is not about ownership. This is about commercializing technologies which will go a longer way. So I would love to, for example, see industry collaboration. I don't mind collaborating with our competitors if we're going to be able to commercialize the technology, which will help decarbonize much faster because we bring scale and money. And there are bureaucratical issues that make this kind of collaboration a little tougher, competition authority, etc. But I think that the climate is a much more pressing issue, and that there are ways around that, legal ways around that, of course. But I think collaboration, as you mentioned, is going to be very, very key. Niklas, I'm taking too much time as I'm talking too much myself as a moderator, but I'm trying to bring the contribution because your experience is so impressive to me. I mean, with you, for example, Save the Winters or Save My Winters, what you're part of, is something that's very dear to me as well. I didn't even know it existed, but essentially I'm a big lover of mountains and the environment that creates and climbing and so on. Now, I guess being part of that is what pushed you into what you're doing as well now. But I'm most curious about the type of companies. So we're here declaring to you that we're offending companies. And we're at a time now where we have decided to hedge the future, as Mark said, to hedge the risks to our financial future. We are going to start investing in nature-based solutions. And the difficulty there, of course, is trusting, as Salah said, in the right execution capability, because these are long-term investments, whether they're mangroves or regenerative forest, it doesn't really matter. What is the cutting edge there now? What would you say if you were to tell us, go and do this now? What would it be?
There are so many ways to capture carbon from the atmosphere. And you mentioned nature-based solutions, obviously that's the thing we can scale right now. So we need to invest into them in the next foreseeable future. But in the long term, we also need to support other innovative solutions. Some of them can actually be nature-based. So they can be underwater sequestration, so-called blue carbon, which is really, really interesting. We have one project in our portfolio where kelp, which is grown in vast amounts. It's a very, very fast-growing biomass. It's grown at open sea, and then it's dropped to the bottom of the deep ocean, where it stores the carbon for potentially thousands of years. And these things can be scaled pretty quickly. Then we have the engineered solutions to capturing carbon, which also need investment, but they're probably not a solution for the next, maybe a decade or so. But at the same time, we need to support them. Our solution has been to invest 20% of all offset payments into these innovative solutions to capture carbon that go beyond these traditional means that we already have right now. That way we help the market evolve as well. We get to know these technologies better. Some of them are very, very expensive, but when we blend them together with more inexpensive methods of sequestering carbon, we can then provide our customers an opportunity to support technologies that otherwise would cost close to, let's say, €1,000 of a ton. So that's been our approach. Personally, I'm a big fan of the nature-based stuff, but it will have limitations because it competes against other uses of land, for example, food production. It has a lot of complexity when it comes to land rights issues, social justice. It has a certain clang of carbon colonialism to it as well when we support these projects in the global south. And then if we don't do everything to minimize our emissions first before we offset, then that's the wrong path. But I think we're getting to a situation where, we just released a white paper this week where we try to put offsetting in its right place, in the tiniest last corner available in corporate climate action. You have to do everything in your power to reduce emissions first and align your emission reduction trajectory with science-based targets, with the Paris Agreement targets that we have. After that, there's no reason why you shouldn't take responsibility for those emissions that you're causing still today, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. And carbon credits is a great way of doing that, but you just need to be super careful in choosing the right projects. And there's a lot of greenwashing in this market, so you need to be vigilant as a buyer.
I fully agree with you. I mean, we are going to do this, by the way. So we are going to invest in nature-based solutions. We have to. I believe we have to, from a fiduciary duty point of view, because today it might be 70, 80, 90 euros, but in 10 years' time, we don't know when it's mandatory in a warming world where millions of people are homeless or waterless, etc. Regulation will be much, much, much stricter, and to actually accumulate some of those credits and get in early, I think is important. But choosing the right projects is very difficult. I guess that's where you come in. We're out of time, but I'm going to keep going unless somebody stops me for at least another 10 minutes. I hope that's okay. But I'll keep the questions much shorter. Salah, I travel all the time and I hate it. I offset my travels. Are you really going to give us synthetic biofuels for the aviation industry?
We already have a sustainable aviation fuel that you can buy. We even developed a way of selling it directly to corporate customers, because it's been a difficult time, obviously, for airlines to invest in it. It's not exactly always a cheap solution. So it's also something that corporations who need to travel, but they want to do it in a way that is more sustainable, then this is an option that they have. So yes, this is something that definitely is a solution that needs scaling up.
Well, that's great. And that's a great example, because sustainable fuel will probably also give you carbon credits. I'm not exactly sure the technology you're using behind it that can offset your other business yourself. I'm much more of a fan of creating offset credits yourself as a company than buying them. That's why we're investing in the solar panels, for example. But that's an easy decision for us because payback is under 4 years. Most of our factories are in very hot countries. So it makes financial sense as well. Mark, as there's a huge boom in investments in this area, and we're seeing now the decline of the high growth tech stocks. Today, I think Amazon and Apple took a huge hit, and they're not even huge growth stocks anymore. They've been around for a long time. But my point there is we've gone through a huge digital transformation, which has created a wave of businesses, which has created massive wealth for investors, employment, and it's also, of course, the efficiencies it's brought. It's added GDP to many regions of the world. How do you see this sustainability transformation and technology companies that are focusing on this with innovation? Do you think we will see in 10 years or 5 years what we're seeing today with the digital transformers or the social media companies? Will we see this with the sustainability transformation technologies?
Yes, I think so. I mean, if you look at the number of climate unicorns, I mean, I actually think, I mean, it's growing super rapidly. I think we can expect the number could reach 100 by the end of the year. I might be being a little bit optimistic, but I think that's a possibility, because it shows where the focus is going, right? So it shows the opportunity for climate impact and in turn economic impact, which I think is crucial, right? So I think that's something that we have to bear in mind. There's also an awful lot of money that's going into renewable energy and energy storage, EVs and so on. Last year, I think it was $900 billion. Then there was also, I think, another 165 billion in climate innovation funding. And then when you look at the venture capital world, $54 billion for 600 deals, right? I mean, that's all the great news. The sort of the sad news is there's going to be a lot of losers. But I think the losers will be the companies that can't commercialize. And I think you mentioned that just a little while ago, Hakan. So I think it's not enough just to go through the motions and try and create something cool. If you can't make money at it, then it's not going to take off. And so climate ventures may start in the lab, but unicorn status is based on the belief and then ultimately the proof that they can scale commercially and collaborate and disrupt corporate ecosystems.
Spot on. So again, another responsibility of corporate leadership teams is to help commercialize these technologies, and we don't have to do it just as a helping hand. I mean, we do it with a profit motive as well, because ultimately we are the testing grounds of those technologies. If there's going to be someone who can come up with a filter mechanism on a enameling plant, which is very energy intensive, and create carbon, which is then physical carbon and can be taken out. And this, we need to be able to buy that expensively, test it, give them the grounds to actually commercialize their technologies. Thank you for that. Niklas, you mentioned earlier that greenwashing is a big problem in this field, and this is where I really struggle, because if we are going to commit, let's say 10, 20 million euros today into planting and then protecting a mangrove forest in Raja Ampat, which is in the middle of nowhere. I've been there. I love it. It's beautiful, but it's got nothing to do with my business. I'm not in the business of planting mangrove forests. I mean, as much as I love what they do and is needed, and we have nothing to do with Indonesia either, maybe a small business there. So this is what makes me nervous, because then I have to trust somebody who's going to plant it. I have to trust somebody who's going to make sure it stays planted, by the way, which is often a problem. And there's so much fraud in this area, it really makes me nervous. How can we really verify and trust the right projects?
Well, we've created our own way of evaluating projects together with climate scientists. And when we use that, we see that 90% of projects with leading market standards fail. So that says a lot of how high we set the bar, but also it maybe says something about the standard on the market in general. I would not put all my eggs in one basket either. When we talk about nature-based solution, we have risks always with the permanence of the mangroves or the other trees or whatever. So I would definitely also make sure that I spread risks by choosing a few projects and not putting everything into one. You are taking a small leap of faith, but with the right due diligence, with the right partners, I think you can make good choices. I mean, when I said there's a lot of greenwashing, not all of it's sort of outright greenwashing. It's just that we lack the necessary structures and lack the necessary maybe regulation as well to police this market, and the existing standards leave too much room for maybe even unintentional greenwashing at times. The issue is not that the mangroves wouldn't be there or the protected forest wouldn't be there. It's just that they account for the carbon in the wrong way, and they tend to over exaggerate the climate impact of these projects.
True.
So also I would recommend a very conservative approach to kind of calculating the carbon, making sure that you rather underestimate the impact of the project than overestimate, especially if you're making an equivalency with your emissions and targeting at a, let's say, carbon neutrality or net zero target. You need to make sure that there's a margin of, or sort of a buffer there, a margin of error, which will definitely be needed when talking about nature-based solutions.
No, I mean, thank you, Niklas. We're already carbon neutral, by the way. We have been for 3 years, but as you know very well, I find that meaningless. And just for the audience, patting ourselves on the back, saying we're carbon neutral today, 10 years later, we'll look back and say, how on earth were we even saying that? How was it a target? Because Scope 1 and 2 emissions are only 2% of our emissions. Who cares if we're carbon neutral in 2% of our emissions? The only thing that matters is Scope 3 emissions. And you won't find many CEOs talking about that. And this is why we need, open innovation to work, because we all have the same problem. It's a problem that no one talks about. But if we actually put it on the table and talk about it, and we can find the right projects to invest in to offset in the future, I think we're both hedging and we're taking on the problem to fix our own future and the future of our children. I'm way over time. I apologize, but sometimes, being the CEO, you can demand the time. So I'm sorry from the team. Last question. I'd like a very direct recommendation from you each on what do you think Arçelik should do and focus on to make it, very short, very quick, and the topic can be anything. I've been pointing the finger at you a little bit. You can point it right back. Salah?
Look at what else you can do beyond climate. You mentioned that sustainability is much more. We just introduced our sustainability vision that goes beyond climate and also does tackle Scope 3, also kind of Scope 3 in the other topics, biodiversity, human rights, how you deal with people and the planet around you. And I think that would put you on a path of being truly sustainable.
Thank you. Mark?
I would say look deep. You've got assets and IP that have the potential to become climate unicorns. Okay, they need to be validated. They need to be accelerated. They may be caught in your R&D pipeline. Maybe you've tried some. Maybe some have failed. Maybe it wasn't the right team. Maybe the timing wasn't right. But maybe it is now. So maybe take some fresh eyes and have a look at what you have, because I think you've got assets that, when paired with perhaps maybe some existing climate ventures, could create unicorns for you. And I think you should just look at what you can bring in and what you can, like you've done with the washing machine example, what you can also share, right? So then you figure out your strategy of what do you do yourself, what do you build, what do you buy. And the other thing, last thing, I would say that I think there are some who believe that ESG comes at the expense of investment returns, but research shows that that's not true. So in some cases, ESG can actually enhance profits. So I know some people think, oh well, it's one or the other. Either this is going to help climate change, or it's going to help ESG, or I get profits. You're not going to get both. But I don't think that's true at all. And I think, like we talked about earlier, that only the profitable path will lead us to net zero. So let's look at everything you've got, all your IP, and what can you do with it, within the company, without the company, and create some climate unicorns.
Thank you, Mark. I mean, I love the idea of creating a few unicorns from what we have brewing within us. That would be proof of concept, and everybody would be happy. Of course, shareholders first.
Of course.
Nicolas?
I think get heavily involved in the carbon removal market. It's an emerging market. If we think about the level of, or the amounts of carbon we need to remove from the atmosphere, we're talking about tens of gigatons, or even hundreds of gigatons before the end of the century. It will become a bigger market than the oil and gas market is today. Be early in that market and influence in the direction where it grows, because right now we're at a pathways. It can grow in the wrong direction when it won't have any climate impact because there's so much greenwashing going on. But if you're committed and involved, you can also influence the direction in which this market will grow. And lastly, I'd say, why stop at carbon neutrality or even net zero? When we have already too much CO2 in the atmosphere, we have a historic responsibility to also remove it from there. So go beyond it and think about negativity, carbon negativity already today, not just something that's in the way in the future, but something that we can actually do already today, just as a thought.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's it's so true. I mean, it took us a while to get our head around, net zero, and now thinking of carbon negativity is actually the way forward, because I believe targets and goals are important. They need to be reachable, but you need to be able to dream, like Salah said. If you can bring dreams to the table, that's how actually, and you give the platform. You become a platform for open innovation where everybody can contribute. Experts, students, creators, mentors, startups. It doesn't really matter. Everybody can bring something to the table. Is how we're going to tackle this existential problem. Well, thank you very much. I mean, we're living in very difficult times, right? We're seeing extreme temperatures in the extremities of the world, in the parts of the world which are frozen, like we all love you guys up in Northern Europe, me on the mountains, but we're seeing temperatures never seen before. And what we don't know is if actually we're going to go in beyond tipping points where things start accelerating in a natural cycle itself. So even today is too late for action that we were going to take tomorrow. Thank you for being with me on the panel. I hope everybody learned something and was interested, but I want to close with saying that for Arçelik, this path is a winning strategy in our business. If we manage to differentiate and lead this transformation for the industry, taking the industry along, everybody will win. But believe me, this will have the biggest single impact on our P&L statement in the future. Thank you for listening. And again, thank you for joining me, dear panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank to Hakan Bulgurlu and our participants for this engaging panel discussion. I actually owe another thank you to Arçelik because until today I had the honor to present several events by Arçelik on sustainability, and no doubt they had a huge impact on my personal sustainability journey. So I would like to thank to Arçelik family. It all starts with awareness and it gains purpose with action, just like Hakan Bulgurlu said. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a wonderful couple of hours with interesting up-to-date topics, valued guests, and of course, your presence and contribution. As we approach the end of the Open Innovation Day by Garage Innovation Hub, it's now time to see the results of our collective survey contributions. Remember? As I mentioned at the beginning of our gathering today, we have a guest artist who is transforming our event into a creative artwork. Here you can see the details of Garage Innovation Hub's LinkedIn account. There you go. Dedicated to Open Innovation Day, this extraordinary artwork will be on Garage Innovation Hub's LinkedIn account just in a couple of minutes. And yes, I am thrilled to add that there is more. The participants who follow Garage Innovation Hub's LinkedIn account and repost the artwork will get the chance to own an NFT of this special artwork. You can join this experience and win an exceptional NFT art by only reposting our post until tomorrow, 30th of April, 1 p.m. Turkey time. So maybe you can set your, it's 4 p.m. now, you can set your watches accordingly. 5 participants among those who reach the highest interaction, such as likes and comments, will be the winners. So to sum it up, until tomorrow 1 p.m. Turkey time, follow Garage Innovation Hub's LinkedIn account and repost the artwork. Warning, no screenshots, just reposts. No screenshots, just reposts. Those are all you have to do to win. Ladies and gentlemen, with your contributions, our artist is working on his artwork. He's doing his final touches at the very moment. And the artwork is going to be on our LinkedIn account just in a couple of minutes. I wonder, before it's on, if we can manage to talk to him and see the artwork. Can we do that? Can we see him? Can we have him online? That'll be lovely.
Hi, Cenk.
Yay, here he is. Hi, Emre, how are you?
I'm good. I'm drawing things like that. You?
Well, I am great. It's been a wonderful day for us, and we're also very excited to see what you've done so far. And you're doing right now your final touches to your artwork, right?
Yes, I am final touching, and it will be over, and just
it will be done very soon.
Yes.
Before we see, would that be possible to see the sketch? Right? We'll be seeing it right now. Yeah, sure. Wow! Look at this. Look at those colors. Oh my God!
Thank you so
It's
much.
wonderful, and you managed this just in a couple of hours.
Yes, actually, this artwork not just mine. We did this together. Actually, it is created with your answers.
Oh, can you do it full screen, please?
Yes.
Yeah, can you make it? Yeah. Yeah, wonderful. I see a lot of familiar things there, actually. I see the Golden Gate Bridge, Galata Tower, and what is that a robot vacuum cleaner?
Yes, robot cleaner.
Wow, it looks brilliant. It looks pretty, very pretty.
You can see on the right Marina Bay Sands actually, and Camel in at climbing a Galata Tower.
Ah, wow, it
I
looks
really
pretty
love
and
mixing
wonderful.
objects together, and we can create this with your answer. This is really enjoying things for me, and I hope everyone love this artwork. Really exciting. It will be an NFT.
Yeah, it will be an NFT, and that's a very interesting point, actually. So NFT is very popular nowadays, and 5 of the contributors will win the NFT of this special artwork. And well, Emre, this is wonderful what you do, but can you tell us a little about yourself?
Yes, my name is Emre Karacan, illustrator, animator, and these days working for gaming industry for conceptual art. Actually, it is hard to say my job. Uh, Shortly, I am designing something when I am drawing.
Well, but you know what you do is really valuable. Today we kept on talking about collaboration and working together, giving hand to hand. Do this not only on your own, but collaboration with our participants. So the answers led you to do this artwork. Can we see it again?
Yes, sure.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, you probably noticed Emre, our artist, is still doing his final touches. This artwork is not on our LinkedIn account yet, but soon. He's doing the final touches when I'm keep on talking to his head, so distract him actually. Did you see the Galata Tower right in the middle, the yellow tower? For those who have never been to Istanbul, there is something I'd like to tell you about this tower. It's a very interesting tower, and I personally think it has a lot to do with our topic today, because Galata Tower, it's a very old tower from the 1300s, I guess. But moreover, what is so important about Galata Tower is that the first man to fly in the world, not the Wright brothers, but the first man to fly in the world with artificial wings, threw himself with artificial wings off this tower and managed to land on the other continent, on Asia. So flew about 4.5 kilometers and landed safely. So actually, Galata Tower has a lot to do with innovation and innovative thinking, I guess. So this tower really belongs to this artwork and belongs to today. So I would like to thank you, Emre. You were so
Thank
busy,
you,
but
Cenk.
still joined.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I will be done this artwork just 2 minutes.
He has another couple of minutes to go. And this artwork, ladies and gentlemen, will be on our LinkedIn account soon. Emre, thank you very much once again. And I leave you alone with your artwork for your final touches.
Thank you so much, Cenk. See you.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, as I just mentioned, 5 of you are going to win that NFT of this special artwork. And this artwork is going to be on our Innovation Hub's LinkedIn account very soon. So all you have to do is to repost it. First follow, then repost the artwork until 1 p.m. Turkey time tomorrow. So ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap up for today. 21st of April, which was just a week ago, was the World Creativity and Innovation Day. This day was declared by the United Nations to raise awareness about importance of creative innovation in problem solving with respect to advancing UN Sustainable Development Goals. I think today was a great creative brainstorming day with the participation of very valued guest speakers and of course you, our viewers. On behalf of the Arçelik family and Garage Innovation Hub, I would like to thank you all for joining us here today. We hope that our engaging conversation has contributed to all of us becoming adventurous, fearless, and curious, having found their mindset, respecting the environment, believing in diversity, creating beautiful connections, and appreciating the joy and effectiveness of collaboration. My name is Cenk Doğar. I am once again delighted to have presented a precious Arçelik event. Until next time, goodbye.